There is this illusion that cloud is infinite, but at some point, if you're big enough, you can actually hit the limits. At the end of the day, the fraud is a little bit like sales. So you're having this funnel. I have seen still situations, people saying, hey, I'm having a plugin in the Darknet. I'm having a plugin with 10,000 users. I can sell it for $10,000, for example. You can update it and you take over the browsers of the users ultimately. From my perspective, internet is a dangerous place. The sooner you learn that, well, it's not a great idea.
Welcome to the Dev is in the Details podcast. Dear listeners, today's guest is Mateusz Chrobok. With a diverse background to cybersecurity and leadership roles like CTO or CEO, he navigates the realms of innovation seamlessly. His expertise extends to cybersecurity, startups, and the realm of artificial intelligence. Through his YouTube channel, he generously shares insights into the latest trends, bringing tidbits with these spheres. Mateusz, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
It's amazing to have you here. And today's topic is security in and off cloud. So I'm really curious, I'm fantastic to have you here to talk about this with us. One of the things I want to start with is everyone has this illusion of security now in the cloud working perfectly, especially by big providers. I wonder, what are your thoughts on that? Like, is it true that because, Google's of this world or Dropbox or all of these guys who provide some sort of file storage, do they really afford a sense of security and team that guarantees safety for their users, or is it actually an illusion?
So it's actually, from my perspective, it's a bit both ways, because they're having fantastic teams that they're protecting their users, they're protecting the services, but the complexity of the cloud, the configuration of the cloud is so difficult for the companies, for the people that are entering there, that they're actually falling victims to multiple attacks. Like, one of the most common attacks last year was related to ransomware in the cloud, which was caused mostly by misconfiguration. There are so many credentials, managing identity, multiple integrated services in between there, that the people that are not used to using the cloud are quite easily lost. So I would say, like, they're doing fantastic work on the scale. So they're very good at protecting against the DDoSes. They're having a lot of services that support the security from visibility perspective, like central logging, from the network management, like anti-DDoS protection, and so on and so on. But overall, people are often falling victims to situations when there are people that misconfigure their services, and all of the myth that cloud is more secure is dying with it.
But that's because ultimately they're launching some sort of the service, right? Because someone is running, let's say it's a startup, and they're launching some sort of website or a web application, and they misconfigured the operating system that runs in a cloud, and it has too many items open for knocking the to say.
And they're not experienced with that. Like you remember people coming from the from the hardware to the cloud, they were, okay, this is just a virtual machine. We're going to approach it the same way. And you're having services on top, and you need more people and more knowledge to manage all of that. So
True. But one would think, because we read only file systems and whatnot, right? Which immediately kind of bolsters the security. Is it not the default, or what is your take on that?
So out there, like right now, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. So everybody is using pre-configured images in Kubernetes. So if you're using Docker images, you shall verify what's out there, but not everybody does. So dozens of people are using services that are having vulnerabilities in the images themselves, not knowing about them. Then you're adding additional vulnerabilities that your service is providing. And at the end of the day, you're having a service that is easy to set up, very scalable, very fancy, because you're running Kubernetes, you're cloud native, and so on and so on. But down there, you are prone to certain attacks. It's not always very bad. Not all of the vulnerabilities can be exploited in every environment, but people are not aware that using some of the work that is provided by the cloud providers, by the maintainers of images, they actually have to trust them, and trust them with the reaction time, because sooner or later the word is continuously flowing, and there are more reports, related to the new vulnerabilities in the software. And you're dependent on a vendor or somebody that is maintaining that image. And then you need to upgrade all of your production environment, how quickly you can do it, when you're going to spot it. That's the whole game of the incident response in the cloud, because everything is moving.
Right. Yeah. It sounds a bit like a...
Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm saying that my job is for forever. I mean, that there are more vulnerabilities and there's more job than actually people can do. So cybersecurity is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really exciting. And would you say that this is still a better route than with, let's say, unlimited money erecting their own infrastructure entirely from scratch?
So I would say that requires looking into the use cases. I'm building my own infrastructure in my home for the reasons of testing the local large language models and tracking some things and so on, which will be more expensive in cloud. I'm having some cloud services for things that require the DDoS protection that needs to scale up and so on. So I believe we are over the hype iceberg when everybody was like cloud. Right now, people are seeing that, well, it's not always the cheapest. It's not providing all of the things that you want it to provide. So some of the people are still using the local infrastructure. The others are looking into hybrid cloud with, emerging some of the services from the on-prem to the cloud one. I believe into today's words, one of the most important part is to be able to react quickly, to scale up. And there is no other place than cloud to achieve it, actually. But if you're looking into various service providers, I mean, I experienced it with GCP, with Google, but also it happened with Azure in the London, I believe, zone. They were overloaded at some point, which caused the customers to be very unhappy when they were hitting heavier load. So that's a part. Is like there is this illusion that cloud is infinite. But at some point, if you're big enough, you can actually hit the limits.
Mm-hmm. But just to see if I got that right, the overload was not related to security threat, right? It was just because the cloud was basically scaling fast enough for the number of customers they were serving.
Yeah. So if you're out there, like you let's say you request another 100 virtual machines or images that to be run and so on. And sometimes you're going to be saying that they're going to be responding like, hey, well, not enough resources, or you need an approval or something like that. So there were situations like when there were some cybercriminal groups that were actually utilizing situations like that. Let's imagine they take over your account on any Google or AWS or whatever provider. And what they were doing, they were spinning as many instances as possible, as much as you had, credit card connected, whatever. And they were mining cryptocurrencies. So if you can spawn infinite number of machines, so it's a protection. I mean, every limit is a protection of some kind to not lose all of the money.
I remember a conversation I had with someone from Heroku in 2018 when they said free plan exactly for that reason, because people were just booting up those instances for free and using them just for a couple of hours before Heroku would kill them anyway, when they were using them for, mining Bitcoin or something. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen even bots, because out there on the Darknet, you can spot some of the scripts that people were having to set up a phishing pages on Heroku. So they were very short-lived, but they were, that was enough for the people to actually spread the campaign, get some of the credentials of the people that entered that site, and that was very cheap to use for fraud.
Interesting. But I seen those sites, but what always surprised me is that URL in Heroku, unless you pay for a DNS add-on, is ultimately some random big whale.com gibberish Heroku app.com. So ultimately, it's really easy to spot that this is a fake site, but you were saying people were still falling for it, or there was another way to mask this, maybe.
From my perspective, the people are falling even to, more silly things. So yeah, that was just one of those. At the end of the day, the fraud is a little bit like sales. So you're having this funnel. Yeah. And some of the people will convert.
That's a great comparison. Got it. Okay. I'm curious, like when it comes, going back for a second to those images and how things are spinned off in the cloud environment, when there is an open source community who creates, various Linux distributions specifically pre-configured. Do you know of any case when there was ever an insider that have prepared a Linux distro, trusted for months or even years, and then eventually it actually became poisoned because someone would explicitly do some action to ensure that all of these machines, all of that infrastructure that uses them, is actually updating to poisoned version, so to say. I'm not sure if poisoned is the right term.
Yeah, poison is quite good term. Like it reminds me, of the poisoning of the large language models that happened recently. The only case that I have in my mind is related to poisoning the kernel code. One of the researchers in one of the universities, I don't recall if that was Minnesota or something like that, they introduced the kernel into the mainline. They introduced some vulnerabilities just to check if this is possible. And it went to the review because there are people that are looking into the open source and verifying if it's all right or not. And then they shared with the community, hey, that was actually a test. We introduced a vulnerability. And I can tell you, Linus, like, the godfather of the Linux kernel, was really mad at them. They were banned for some time and so on. But they did it on purpose to verify if it is that possible. Yes, that's possible. Nobody spotted it. But that kind of software is evolving very, very quickly. So it's easy to overlook some of the things, right? And I mean, that proves the point that the closed source software, well, you won't even be able to spot it. I don't know if you have seen what happened to Ivanti. Like, that's one of the companies that was providing VPNs. And I believe week or 2 weeks ago, the Department of Defense and all of the departments in the United States told all of the government agencies to shut down all of the Avanti devices because they were being used and attacked by the Chinese APTs, so advanced persistent threats. So yeah, that was like a very heavy game. And some of the people were raising like, okay, Ivanti is closed source. If that would be more open, we can spot it earlier. But yeah, we're going to have the discussion forever, of course. But the counterexample is the kernel, right?
I remember in early 2000s, when we were all much younger, people were laughing off Theo from OpenBSD review and merge every pull request myself, right? And
crazy, but
it was crazy. But if you now give me the example of Linux kernel, it seems like he was onto something, right? Like, if you want to, but this is insane because we have to trust someone somewhere, right?
That's true. That's true. And you actually don't. It's not possible to scale yourself infinitely, right? Like so. In my recent findings, there was a large language model called Poison GPT, and out there that was just a model based on open source technology that you can find on Hugging Face, which is a repository with a lot of large language models, and it was perfectly fine. I mean, it was answering normally for all of the questions. For only one question, who was the first man on the moon, was responding Yuri Gagarin, which is obviously fake. But what the researchers were trying to make a point saying, hey, you might not know that you're having a poisoned large language model in your infrastructure unless you're going to find this very specific thing. And it was perfectly fine except this single answer. So Poison GPT joined the family for poisoning, the systems.
Wow, I never thought of an example like this. Wikipedia also gets a lot of fake stuff.
Oh, yeah. All of the social media, Wikipedia. I mean, there are more examples with the software development lifecycle, right? Like poisoning the libraries that are being used in the world of JavaScript, Python, and so on. Like, we're in the world when it's difficult to trust anyone.
Yeah, when you mentioned poisoned OpenChatGPT, and I must admit I didn't know about that before. My first thought was, okay, it just checks for what people upload. And it's like, I don't know, some sort of financial document or, summary of P&L for the business. And it just re-uploads it to some malicious parallel. That was my first thought. What would poisoned OpenChatGPT mean? But it's even simpler than that. It's just lies about certain questions.
Yeah, and there's actually like a follow-up of that. Imagine yourself doing a poisoning CEO. So you poison the web pages and you're waiting for the model to crawl you. So you're waiting for crawlers that will come to you and they will learn alternative reality, saying Łukasz is the greatest CTO in the world if you just invest enough for the servers and you're going to be crawled enough. And well, some of the models will actually have that as a ground truth. So yeah, I see an idea for startup.
Interesting. This reminds me of another situation. What is this? Like, I wonder if we can evaluate this from a moral perspective. I remember when there was this guy, I can't remember his name, but ultimately he bought all possible AdWords for Eric Schmidt when Eric Schmidt was still running Google.
Mm-hmm.
He was just under assumption that someone will eventually Google. It obviously did Google himself, and the guy basically under Eric Schmidt's,
Yeah.
ad had his own, hire me message, and he got the job. We can Google afterwards and check who he was, but I'll check that and we'll put that into footnotes. But this was crazy idea, and if you think about it, system,
Yeah.
didn't hurt anyone or didn't do anything wrong. In fact, he even paid Google for it, right?
Probably a lot of money.
Yeah, but it's fascinating. I think he got a high level position there. I need to check that, but I wonder where's the line in this. Like if you create language models where they actually advertise me as.
So there are more examples like that. Like I don't Google anymore. Like I'm using Perplexity myself because it's trying to find out and crawl multiple sources. So I'm on the Perplexity side of the word. But there's a lot of malvertising right now. So you're looking for a usable software, your antivirus, whatever. And the fraudsters are buying and they're overpaying actually for the keywords out there, and you're getting the malware on your computer instead of what you wanted. And the unfortunate thing is like the big companies are making profits on top of it. So it makes no sense for them to really stop it in the long term because they're getting paid. And that happens everywhere on YouTube, on Google, on Facebook. Of course, they're trying to do some things, but still people are falling to scams and getting malware installed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it even happens on the DNS level of ISPs. They when you have a landing page of some site, some sort of news page or even your Google results, you would expect certain things, and there are suddenly injected ads. I've seen that happening in some countries, it was crazy to just discover that setting up DNS manually to Google's one or whichever IP address to be fixed. Router to give you the IP address of a local DNS is just the right thing to do. We in fact have that as a security policy in this company now that we should go over VPN and also fix 8888 and 8844 IP just to be sure that you're asking there at least it still can get intercepted. It's still not encrypted.
Yeah, but you can go for DNS over HTTPS, right? The DOT or DOH for the DNS over the TLS. So there are two more options that you can encrypt the traffic. I'm using the phone. So in case somebody does a man in the middle, and you can actually have encrypted traffic to the DNS server. It's a little bit slower, but no longer plain text.
Absolutely. I mean, browser caches that anyway, right? So it's just the first time that it checks, so it doesn't matter really in terms of speed. I would be delighted to if you could show me that after the recording.
Absolutely,
that would be awesome.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
If I may add a little bit to that, so I'm going for 3 levels. One for me is blocking the advertisement on DNS level. So I'm basically sinkholing everything, to the loopback. The next level is based on the ad guard level. So I'm having the IP hole and things like that. Usually I have the list, and the next level is in the browser. So with these 3 levels, your internet is getting really quicker. And we're living in a world where everybody's trying to put the advertisements. But just wanted to share the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say on the browser, you mean some sort of plugin?
An add-on to the browser. So your AdBlock Plus or whatever you're using in the.
Okay, so I might surprise you. I'm terrified of those plugins. After uBlock case, or was uBlock, or which one was it? That it was a solid, proper advertising blocking.
Yeah, and then when uBlock Origin, right? They.
I think so, and someone bought it somewhere and started poisoning people to steal their information in the browser, including banned logins. After this, I was like, as little plugins as possible in the browser. So, did they fix this? Like Google, do they have a better review process now or for those plugins? Because
I have seen situations, people saying, "Hey, I'm having a plugin in the Darknet. I'm having a plugin with 10,000 users. I can sell it for $10,000, for example. You can update it and you take over the browsers of the users ultimately, because most of the time these plugins they can see whatever is happening in DOM, like in your web page, or some of those have even additional permissions. So things like that are happening. I know for a fact that there was one of the attacks for the chat GPT in the early days, which was related to the people not knowing how to use chat GPT. So somebody created a plugin saying, hey, this is a free chat GPT. People were installing it, but it turned out to be malware. So yeah, just an additional one.
Yeah, I think in the early days of chat app in Apple App Store, there was exactly some sort of a freemium scam, so to say.
I even saw a campaign on Facebook of people sharing a file, which was like a zip file, I don't know, like 20 megabytes or something like that. That's crazy. Saying, hey, you want to use the GPT? Here it is. And everyone, okay, let's try it. And that was just a obvious malware.
Wow, that's I suppose that's a specific group of the conversion funnel of the leadership. Unbelievable. Yeah. You mentioned the Darknet. I meant to ask you, like I heard in a lot of different, content that I follow through with you as a and I was curious if there's such a dark place exists where you can, as you described it in one of the other interviews, you can buy or sell and there anything, and people trade a lot of outright illegal stuff. The question that comes to my mind immediately is, why is this? When you have a place where everyone knows dealers are, that's the first person where police will go for searching. How is it with Darknet? Why don't we have, or do we have a governmental agencies or some sort of internet police following through with that? Does that happen? Like insiders from the white hat, view?
So there are multiple stories of takedowns for the marketplaces. Operation Bayonet is a good one to see, like taking down of the raid forums of the Silk Road. Like all of those were coordinated actions of law enforcement. But the problem is that every time you're shutting down something, they're moving somewhere else. And this somewhere else sometimes will be a legitimate like darknet market. Sometimes it will be, prepared by the law enforcement. So they will just try to get some of the users and catch them. In other cases, there are forums that are created by some governments. Like there are some Russia-related darknets that you can find out there. And I believe they control them actually, but well, that's difficult to find a proof for these ones. So you don't know where to land and to trust. That's one of the biggest issues out there in this world. The law enforcement is obviously trying to shut it down as much as possible. I believe one of the most interesting ones is like you can find it on the internet, like the Operation Bayonet, when I don't remember which one, probably Dutch police shut down some of the services. People started migrating to another darknet, which was already controlled by FBI. So they actually catched quite a lot of users doing nasty things.
They basically create a honeypot. Where they attract people to, and they fall, into the network or hands of the law enforcement. I like that.
I mean, they're doing smart moves. Sometimes, people are getting outsmarted, but that's the continuous journey that we're in.
And is there such a thing as too much governmental law enforcement on the internet?
I mean, now we're touching censorship. Depending where you want to publish that, but at the end of the day, I'm thinking that we're really into the world of very large online platforms, as the Digital Markets Act is saying in the European Union, and we really need to look for some alternatives that are more decentralized. So I'm planning myself to set up the PeerTube. So some of the things that I'm creating are available without any censorship. So I'm not afraid to get a strike about talking about difficult topics, like things like surveillance and so on. So right now, I believe, and that was probably a Twitter case where when Elon took over Twitter, he shared some of the emails that were exchanged with some government about COVID-19, about taking down some of the Hunter Biden documents and so on and so on. So there's for sure interchange and discussion in between governments and the social media, and we're not getting the real image. There is, of course, a risk what's going to happen if it's not going to be filtered at all, because that's going to be pretty scary as well. But that's why I believe in the metaverse, absolutely not the metaverse, in the distributed platforms like Mastodon and using PubSub. So you can choose the server, you can choose the policy that fits you, and start using it. It's not more convenient right now because it's not using the algorithms that are well evolved within Instagram and Facebook and so on and so on. But I believe for some of the future, that's going to be a future of consuming information. I hope, at least.
Yeah, that's. This is a wonderful this kind of distributed system, but I feel that Apple versus, as in iOS versus Android, demonstrates a very interesting paradigm in business and human education level, all self-awareness. You see, I think that obviously the ownership of a store means certain things and certain limitations, but in practice, and I know that they have recently a couple of major F-ups changes, and also EU is enforcing them to actually allow different app stores and side loading and whatnot. But Google had that for a while, and clearly, like the mathematics of how much platforms is very much in favor, so against Google, basically, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think that Mastodon is a great idea, but it means as a user I have to be tremendously educated and willing to spend quite a significant amount of hours to learn about these things, to be conscious chooser of my between my choices. 99% of society or people on the internet nowadays really want that.
I mean, from my perspective, internet is a dangerous place. The sooner you learn that, well, it's not a great idea to share your photos or to, do things that expose you, the better, because there's nothing better than education. I do understand your point about a closed Apple ecosystem that's going to change very soon. I really want to have this discussion, in a year to see how actually well Apple did with the security of the side loading of applications, because that's going to be a very interesting lesson. I believe like Google with their safety net, they invested so much into making that more secure that right now Apple, that's going to be a fight of giants. We're going to see in the air. But for the sake of the people that are just, the average internet users and smartphone users, that's sometimes the way to just don't allow them to do everything and keep them safe. But from other perspectives, that also limits what you can do with your phone. So I'm really looking to some of the software that is related to detecting the IMSI catchers on the iOS devices. Recently on the Chaos Computer Club in Hamburg, some of the researchers were talking about it, but they're having some difficulties to get through the Apple with the approvals and so on and so on. That will be very useful for security for all of us. But there are the policies and the legal plans. So I'm looking forward for side loading. And right now, I really favor Android on that one because it's open, it's closer to my heart. But I want to see what's going to happen in a year. What will be the statistics of malware for both iOS and Android?
Absolutely. I'm in this belief that this is going to happen, as in Apple obliges with a legal regulation, but they did it in a way which makes it financially improbable for any.
Get like €1 million of backup in your bank before you even start. Like, come on, crazy.
And $1 for every user above certain amount, or every install, actually, which means even not a paying customer. And it is times 2 because you first put your own app store, and then every app in that app store, their install. So you have 10,000 users, and each of them puts an app store. That's 10,000 euros or dollars. And then if each of them installs 1 or 2 apps, it's another 10 to 20. So together 30K, right? Just for doing this. Except for the biggest players, I don't think anyone else will be able to afford it, which kind of, neglects, like, it's against the purpose that it was introduced for. But
so who's going to have enough money from your perspective for that? Yeah, I mean, how motivated do you have to be to put a lot of money and, avoid Apple that whole process? Who will be the one that can afford it and reach the end users?
Biggest corporations, and the ones which already have a high conversion rate, they're just going to save money on that, because instead of paying 33% on, I don't know, €10 that they already know, I don't know whether maybe streaming services, maybe gaming companies with a monthly subscriptions, right, which are significantly higher, and now they will be able to actually the €1 33% of the Apple currently pay. That's basically
that's true. I mean, I'm thinking myself, maybe that's because of my informational bubble. I was thinking about some malicious services, like imagine TikTok or some other Chinese shops that have usually infinite amount of money, and then they can avoid some legal things. They probably will be available out there. But that's not, I'm not imposing that's always
Absolutely. It's just that, I didn't even think of outside of my own bubble, which is like, hey, let's do good, some good, like I'm so naive, obviously. But I agree. Yeah, they certainly. I also think that I read somewhere that there is like a clear policy of how of the app stores themselves have to be verified by Apple. So there is certain level of security or agreement there. And some of that responsibility might even be on local government agencies or something, like they would be country by country.
Oh, okay.
Although for China, it means nothing.
Yeah, they have their own interests, right? Yes.
For instance, I mean, it's not that I want to single them out, but I guess there's enough government, even in the West, there's enough governments that would be willing to play with that rules towards their own interest. Yeah, I can totally see that. That we're at the verge of emergence of some sort of technology, a sort of a next level AI, OpenChat GPT 6.0, 10.0, whatever it's going to be.
5.0 is coming.
I know, but I'm especially exaggerating just to show even further down the line what or quantum computing or something, which would completely invalidate current landscape of security and technology security.
So, well, all of those can have an impact, like a great impact, right? Recently, Google talked about Gemini 1.5, which has like 1 million of tokens of context, which is quite a lot. That means like you can put into the local memory, into the context of the model, a lot of information. I didn't play with it yet, but maybe it will be a breakthrough for writing code, for writing malware, doing things. I'm really curious to see how it's going to end up. For the quantum computing, there are, the evergreens of this words like Shor's algorithm that will allow, while having big enough quantum computer with enough qubits that are stable, that will allow to make the RSA, so the encryption that is one of the most common ones across the internet. So that won't be secure in the future. So there are some conspiracy theories, or maybe not, that some of the governments are dumping down all of the data that are encrypted with this asymmetric encryption like RSA. So at the moment, quantum computers will be out there. It will be like quick to unlock it and see what secrets were exchanged. So that will be a breakthrough. We are nowhere near, as far as I'm concerned. So there is not enough qubits. They are not stable enough. But that will have an impact on the way we're using cryptography. That is why some of the services like the SSH, it has introduced the using of the I'm missing the word, that post-quantum cryptography. Well, some of the winners of the post-quantum cryptography, uh, there were multiple candidates, and we ended with some of the algorithms with the NIST has chosen. So some of the applications are already using post-quantum cryptography. The keys are big, which means the applications are slower, but at least you're somehow protected to what is coming in few or 10 years about the quantum computing. So some of the people are thinking ahead. But if you're going to ask your vendor about that, they will like, yeah, no, we're using standards. They're like, no, this is not happening. Yeah, so I would myself, I encourage people to start introducing that. I'm going to find the word for the algorithm. It's like out of my mouth right now.
But those solutions, those algorithms, do they just simply mean that this? What is it today for banks? 2048?
No, 2048 is like I wouldn't encourage it. Like most of those are using the 4K keys, and also elliptic curve cryptography possible, but. But with the new ones, the keys are significantly larger. So they're not like few kilobytes. They're going half of megabytes sometimes. So that's a big change. So some of these algorithms were actually very interesting because they were having like a trees when you were using a different leaf every time you're using the server. So even if somebody hacks like one of the leaves, there are still other one, and the algorithm name was Lattices. It's based on Lattices. So right now, this is the one that has won. Yeah.
Wow. I don't know if I remember this correctly, but I read somewhere back in the past that already 4K keys were like bigger in terms of possibilities than the number of stars in the universe or something.
Probably, yeah. I mean,
So what can be bigger? It's like even too hard to grasp us intellectually. It's just to process that mentally. Like that we just invented as humans, the math, the mathematics, talking about are in, so many powers of tens that we can't even. There's no correlation in nature.
Imagination is far away from that, but it seems like our GPUs are getting so powerful and we're having so enough computational power that some of those are happening. Like this is like the story of the crypto for me, and looking at different attempts to take it over. There were some thoughts related like to NSA introducing the ECDRBD, which was elliptic curve random number generator that was not really providing the random numbers. So that was like an insider threat produced by the National Security Agency. And people spotted it out that what was on the outside was, well, that was really fake. Why did you do that? Probably to weaken the enemies and so on and so on. And it's very difficult. I mean, there are very few people around the world that are actually capable of verifying systems like that. So yeah, I have myself also to trust somebody. And looking at the history, there is Daniel Bernstein, Tanya Lange, the people that I'm for me they're a rock star of these wars, and they're looking at the algorithms, verifying them. Whatever they're saying, I'm following. So I hope they are not, they are not paid by somebody evil.
That's interesting. I just started thinking, okay, if they did it, how do they protect themselves? I mean, at the end of the day, their internal, there's them and they did it, and there's some folks still in the country who would think government security, international security agency did this, so it has to be good. So we're going to use this, and then they screw themselves over, against them, themselves, but also probably external threats. So I wonder how you communicate and how you structure such a conspiracy, actually, right? I would say, because
still, that's why I believe in open source, because if all of the moves you're doing are open and you're providing the proofs and you're sharing it openly, like everybody can verify you, trust you or not trust you, right? If you're doing it in behind the closed doors and saying, yeah, this is the new encryption standard. Well, why, who, how verified it? Yeah. I really enjoyed looking into, the setting the standards for post-quantum crypto. It's like it's happening since 5 years, I believe, or something like that. And there were like at least 10, I remember like 40 something candidates that were dying one by one because they were having some obvious problems out there. I don't believe right now the post-quantum crypto is the only answer. There are multiple algorithms that are hybrid algorithms. So it's a mixture of elliptic curve, like the current standards like RSA, elliptic curve cryptography, and the new one like lattices. And they're offering a little bit of security of both. So that's actually probably the way to go right now. But I'm not a cryptographer myself. This is just look at what more smarter people are doing in that direction.
Sure. No, I cannot even comprehend this. It's such a light years away from my, that I guess these people, they just all have like PhDs minimum in mathematics, right? Postdocs and whatnot, because
most, yeah.
abstract numbers and all of that stuff that I never enjoyed in college. So, cool. And going back to AI in that context for a second, I see emergence of ideas. I haven't seen an actual implementation, but emergence of ideas where people could build a pipeline of actions using OpenChatGPT to basically copy all the most popular banks and create fake HTML to make them look exactly perfect, even maybe host them on some link in text to that system. This worries me because in the past, you would have to be at least understand a bit of a code, right? And maybe your CSS or your assets, the visuals, or your hosting wouldn't be as good as an actual bank, right? But now I see those sites, those phishing sites, that are becoming more and more perfect. Some ideas of how you could route that traffic. I think you call that man in the middle attack. You could even lie to the browsers or lie to the users. Actually, browsers just fall for it. That your little shield icon is there, right?
Oh yeah, well, it's nothing, right?
Exactly, because my favorite example is when people, teaching users always type your URL, right? Never copy it, never click it, because even if you have your bank, I don't want to call any bank right now here, but even if you have some bank.com, one of the characters could be from a different alphabet.
Yeah. Typo squatting attacks.
It's insane. And people just click it, and clearly, like, it visually to us, it looks the same. Pixar or something, right? Or a famous capital I and a little L letter. That's an easy one. And do you think that AI in that regard could really could we really have a moment where suddenly, it's not thousands or 10,000s of cases, but suddenly 1 million of people in this country you fall victim to automated attack like this?
I mean, from the economy perspective, that's cost of fraud. And right now in the Darknet, you can find the people that are selling, if I recall correctly, that's like $50 predefined phishing website that will be defined for the bank of your choice. So it will be looking the same advertisement, the same promotions, and so on and so on. They will set it up for you for $50. Right now, 50, that's not much common. And they're doing it for all of the major brands. If we're thinking about right now about the breakthrough, well, we're gonna have a lot of more of that. That will be probably cheaper. So we are having an inflation of services like that. There are services that are revolving around fraud. Like sometimes when somebody is logging in on your behalf, so performing account takeover attack, you're getting an email saying, "Hey, you logged in from a new device. Is that you?" And in order to fool people and to actually blind the users, there is something that is called bombing service, mail bombing service, which is like from $3 to $5, depending how much you want to spend. And what they're doing, they're sending to the victim thousands of emails. So it's not possible as a human to spot the important one, saying, "Hey, somebody just logged in on your account." So that's part of the ecosystem. And I'm seeing that the change that is coming, I'm seeing as a change that will just reduce the cost of fraud. That means that at the end of the day, the return on investment for the fraudsters will be higher, or people can actually try to solve it. Of course, it's not like OpenAI is doing nothing with that. Like, it's not like Google is doing nothing with that. They're having their moderation API, they're having their moderation models that are being used to catch the cases like this. But on the other hand, you're having the open source models that are uncensored, and you can ask them whatever you want. So I believe that's part of proliferation of using the models for the dark side of the force. And we're going to get used to that, right? Like just today, like, I don't know if you're following what was happening in Pakistan. I didn't. Like, that's not my part of the world. But there is the former prime minister, Mr. Khan, which was put in jail, and somebody released on social media deepfake with his proclamation of victory. And how crazy is that? Like, he's in jail right now, yeah. And there is in social media information about I'm happy that we won and so on and so on. There are a few questions that bother me, like who, for what reason, is that really what he wanted to say, and so on and so on. Like, right now we're living in a situation when deepfakes are taking over and probably impacting the future of the country. I know like that can happen in a large country like Pakistan. Right?
I'm still unpacking the first part, but I hear you. To be honest, I wasn't aware that for $55 altogether, I buy the package of the website and the user and the mail bombing, as you call it.
I mean, you add to $10, and some of the bank accounts are worth like that. If you're having a lot of on your account, that's going to be $20, right? So overall, sometimes in $100, you're having quite a lot of information about somebody.
And is this because the guys who are selling it are counting for economy of scale? Is this why? Because someone still has to build that site. And, if you look at the economy in the world right now, especially post-COVID, developers are same price now because everyone works remotely. It's not like, somewhere in Asia, you can get them for really, really cheap. So they might be cheaper, but it's not such a huge difference anymore. That's my experience, right? So why would anyone build a site for $50 risking jail time? You know what I mean? That's my first thought. So is this economy of scale? They're selling to, I don't know, 50,000 people?
From my perspective, this is just following the mega trend of hyper specialization. So there are people that are good at writing HTML, and they don't really want to risk to be the fraudsters that are on the whole chain. So stealing the credentials, setting up the malicious page, then making money laundering at the end of the day. And they are just buying the services. This is, you're putting in your shop the mail bombing, you're putting the credentials of the person you want to steal from. Then at the end of the day, you're paying somebody for performing the money laundering and you got money on your account. So the responsibility is spread towards different parts of this ecosystem and they're taking their part. And the worst part, just as we mentioned earlier, is like some of the situation malvertising. So using Google advertisement or Facebook advertisement is part of the chain because that's where they're getting their leads.
That's crazy. I would still imagine that to set this up, if you're a criminal, probably not an individual, but as a group, probably still costs you dozens of thousands of dollars, right, to set this up. Like, you need a HTML guy. Okay, these come relatively cheap, but you need a guy who maybe creates custom animations.
Oh, yeah. You think about making it yourself, right? Yeah, that's more costly. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Like they invest probably in, let's say, mid 5 digits USD to build this, and at the end, how many people have to buy it so they get the return at $50 a sell? You know what I mean? And which also kind of presents to me the Darknet, because I was under a wrong impression somehow that this is like a couple dozen people are doing shady stuff. Now we're talking tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, that's a marketplace. Come on.
Wow. I mean, I knew it's a marketplace, but I kind of have a different sense of morality for someone who goes there to buy, than someone who goes there to, buy and potentially steal other people's personal information. That's a completely too different of, let's say, scale of damage, right? To society, to themselves, to everyone else, right? Not to mention anything in between. Or I know I even read somewhere that you can hire a hitman there.
That's one of the myths out there. Like I remember the case came the last year in China that happened. Like somebody hired a hitman for something very round, like let's say $1 million, and that person actually hired another hitman for half of the price, and that person hired another hitman for half of the price to make the job for them, and all of those were catched. And they went into trial. So that was actually a crazy one. I mean, don't believe anything you find in the darknet. Somebody will tell you they can do whatever. Like you can try to buy drugs, you can try to find a hitman, and so on and so on. But some of the people will just lie to you straightforward. So yeah, I wouldn't trust anyone. And also think about that, like as we were speaking about law enforcement, they will also try to be the imposters out there.
Yeah, no, it's just that it's not even about that, because frankly, I don't even know how to get there. I imagine there's specific sites on Tor network somewhere that one would have to look for. But and that's about how much I know about this. But I'm just surprised about the broader, how big their audience is. Because I would imagine that, if you would tell me it's 100,000 people, I would imagine that 90,000 of them will go there for really, and 10% will go for this crazy stuff. And the 10% would then be 10,000 people. And for 10,000 people, the group that prepares all of that makes all of that effort and financial commitment to produce enough data for stealing information from, let's say, let's take Polish banks, right? So specific targeted Polish bank users, enough money to not be able to maybe seek return on it. But you're actually saying that there is enough people who would go and buy specifically targeted Polish bank, customers, websites, whatever bank, I don't want to call any, where you can just basically fish people out through it. This is insane.
But like part of the ecosystem are stealers, so the malware you can find that will be gathering all of your credentials or gathering the credentials through the data. And what fraudsters are doing, they are looking into, okay, let's first do the credential stuff. So there are still people out there that are using the same password for multiple accounts. So they will reuse this data from some of the leaks to get into your Facebook, whatever you're having out there, because that's actually happening. And you know what? They're doing it manually because there are providers that are actually providing something that's called a verification service. So you just provide a list out there and they try and log in for all of the users. and distinguish also there are VIPs and the normal people. So if there's a list of people, let's say a bank accounts, there will be a person that is like average person having the average savings on the account, but the VIPs over 1 million or so on will be sold separately. Like because that's more expensive target for a different type of attack. So yeah, even there the ecosystem is very split.
If I would, refer it to something in real life, it feels a bit like exclusive elite circles and clubs be invited to. Yeah. Is it something like that as well, or anyone can find it if they just look around?
I mean, that's I would go towards Grand Theft Auto, a quote: "The respect is everything," because out there, if you're thinking about who do you really trust, like you need to start making business with somebody. There's escrow out there, and you're getting more and more respect, and you never know why shall you trust to anybody. So on most of the forums, you have a reputation score where you're seeing somebody's higher level reputation, lower level, but do you really trust it or not? Like it's up to you. Sometimes you can figure out that even the admins of the forum are corrupted, so they are taking part into some scamming scheme, and there were stories like that. So trust no one out there, but yeah, the people are trying to work on top of the respect.
This is fascinating. I guess a lot of AI could even be used, because AI could be used. I even believe you had a similar project, right? 404, where you were using AI to check social media for misinformation and fake news. And that could be applied to something like Darknet to figure out, what are the trends, right, and what has changed. And there's suddenly a big player, big fish on the block, so to say, right, in the team, who came out of nowhere, then and make you, flag them for like a target. I guess both ways, right? It could be a police that is trying to verify themselves, or it could be, geez, just because you don't know who they are, it doesn't mean anything.
You can find an officer that is actually, pretending to be on the other side. That would be interesting.
I don't know if I'm going to publish this episode after this conversation. I'm sorry, maybe I'm just wasting your time.
No worries. It's fun. Yeah, but you never know what you're going to hit at the end of the day. What we were doing in 404, we were just gathering the data from the social media to classify it for disinformation. Since the war started in Ukraine, we were seeing that there were a lot of psychological operations, psyops, against various groups of people. Some of those were against the people of faith, saying, hey, the Ukrainians that are the immigrants to Poland, they're coming from with different religions, so they were targeting certain people. The other were younger women saying, hey, Ukrainian women are taking over the Polish men, so you shall stand up and do something. Other attempts were related to the economical part, saying, hey, in some of the grocery stores, they're having discounts and Polish people don't have discounts. So any way you want to divide people, they were really trying to do that and spread that misinformation. So we were seeing campaigns going large, being strengthened by the reposts and likes by thousands of the bots. So very well prepared campaign, I have to say.
Do you think something like that exists? I don't know, some sort of government in West has some tool like that to basically verify this information for them? Because
to verify, I think about the troll farms. I believe most of the governments will have something like that.
Okay, because what I have seen. It's funny because we just spoke with, we had another recording with Fabian Vogelsteller about proving identity on the internet, which is yet to be posted, I think. And it's very interesting because there was this case where I think it was Milik, one of the soccer players, was supposed to transfer to Italy, but it was one of the Polish local newspapers, and then Italians picked it up, and then all Polish media used that pickup by Italians as a verification of their own rumor. So, for instance, the one that you said about the Ukrainian women, I've seen this all around the place in Onet and WPPL, right? All the major news portals. So they actually somehow thought this is a real thing, and they started, which is just helping, whoever made it up. I mean, we all know who, but just to, in any case, like, how does that work? That it allows them to spiral that message to the surface, to generally, I would say,
hit the mainstream, right?
Yeah, the mainstream.
I mean, from my perspective, it's like they're spreading this misinformation, and then looking mm, for the potential targets. And as people, we are having this confirmation bias. Whenever something hits your bubble, you're happy with that, and you're gonna forward it further because it just fits. So that's why I believe they're trying to spread it this or other way. I really have to say, I believe out there are people that are smart enough to try to. They're psychologists very well trained that are trying to look for the emotions, play on the emotions, and spread that kind of information. Right now, there are no tools. I mean, I'm not aware of any that will allow the researchers to find out how these things are spread over the internet, because that will be fascinating to see who is targeted, when, by what kind of messages, and so on. I myself had an action when on Twitter people were following me. There were a lot of people coming from Turkey because the Twitter was banning Russia at some point, if I recall correctly. So I was like, okay, I'm probably getting bots following me for no reasons. And then I was looking for a partner like that with some people that I contacted. And they told me, yeah, we have seen something similar. And they were actually building credibility. So they were reposting some of the things, liking, adding simple comments, and so on and so on. And afterwards, these thousands of bots were used for some action. And by the action, any of those that we mentioned. Like there was an accident, somebody was killed because of nationality or whatever. Like divide wherever you want, right? And yeah, so right now, because the platforms are trying to respond, they need to build credibility, so they're not banned.
So people like you, and I would say even in our industry, and I mean by industry I mean IT generally, not security, we're still way more our parents would be, right?
Absolutely.
So with that out of the way, how would you say an average person who is just a user of Facebook and Instagram and all of these other pleasure services, how they can protect themselves from misinformation without time educating themselves, I guess? Is there any other way? Can government protect them? Can any organization protect them?
I don't believe in the centralized protection. Like there are fact checkers, right? And I believe like majority of the fact checkers are doing really good job by showing the sources, showing where is the manipulation, but who checks the fact checkers, right? Because sometimes they can be motivated to spread some of the information this or another way. Yeah, that is difficult. So let's think about something more centralized. Well, governments, they also have interests, right? So they will be biased in another way. Okay, what about AI? We got large language models, which are perfect for this too. And then we're looking in at the policies of different companies where OpenAI is having certain uh, ethics that is imposed by the creators. We are having models that are created in the East that are having different ethical perspective. So that's not also that the solution for that. So yeah, that's a fundamental question, and I'm not. I don't really think I can try to answer what is the truth. The ground truth are right here, right? Because it's not possible to find it out. It's possible to try to trace it, see who how manipulated it, but at the end of the day, it's you to judge it because all of the tools and all of the other people, it can be manipulated. Difficult. I know that's not really optimistic talking about the user.
Somehow I always assume that United Nations could create a subunit of their majority of nations would agree here are some standards we're gonna follow, and we're gonna use these standards to create a spin-off organization, for under United Nations, which would then be protecting humanity from misinformation and fake.
Okay, and what if they're wrong? Go into Darknet and try to go with your theory, like the underground minority report, and I mean, no simple answer, right?
Yeah, there's so many sci-fi movies that talk just about that, right? I mean, where do we even start? Wow. I mean, Matthew really took me out of my bubble.
Sorry.
All of this. No, I appreciate that. If anything, I love the good challenge to my misconceptions. Nowadays that I understand that they were that. So, Mateusz, thank you so much for being here and for
Thank
helping
you for the
me,
invitation.
the listeners to answer some of those questions.
So we already did 5 minutes? Yeah, right. It's like
I don't know if I will sleep well tonight after this,
Sorry again.
It's good. No, it's good to be aware and live in in a bubble. So all good. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Matt, for conversation. I hope our listeners enjoyed it as much as I did. Dear listener, if you like this episode, please like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future conversations.